Whoa, well, I was not expecting that, is the first thing that comes to mind when attempting to describe Alex Garland's new film, Civil War, a dystopian action movie set in the not-too-distant future of America. I will admit that, like many others, I had a bad feeling about this movie when it was first announced. Considering the current political climate in the United States and Hollywood's predilection to inject their personal politics and beliefs into every single moment of every single day, one might be forgiven for assuming this movie would be nothing more than Orange Man bad, DEI good, down with patriarchy, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't. And as of this writing, I am still kind of surprised. But is it a good surprise? Well, I suppose that's where this review comes in. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this spoiler-free presentation in soothing baritone as we discuss Civil War right now on Ugly Review. Our story begins in New York City during an unspecified year in the not-too-distant future. Per the name of the film, a civil war has erupted and the United States of America has been splintered into 4 separate groups: the Loyalist States, the Western Forces, the Florida Alliance, and the New People's Army. We are never told what any of these different factions believe or what ultimately triggered the war, and this consistent vagueness is by far the weakest aspect of the film. And yes, we are already at my biggest criticism, but let's gather a little more about the plot before we really dissect what's going on. After surviving a suicide bombing, veteran war photographer Lee Smith and her colleague Joel go to a hotel where they have a few drinks with their mentor Sammy, and where they are introduced to young up-and-coming war photographer Jesse, who idolizes Lee's work. After some back and forth and a good night of sleep, the quartet heads out the next morning towards Washington, D.C., where they hope to get one final interview with the president before the Western forces arrive and capture the capital. Not long after they leave, the group happens upon a rural gas station and decides that it's wise to fill up on supplies. I didn't mean to rhyme, but there you go. After some negotiating, Jessie wanders off to the nearby car wash, where she finds 2 men being tortured. One of the gas station owners tells her they were caught looting and that he actually went to high school with one of the men. Lee joins the pair, and after seeing Jesse become very uncomfortable around the violence, she attempts to defuse the situation by asking if she can take a photo with the gas station owner standing next to the looters, who are very badly beaten and strung up by their wrists. After departing, Jesse comments on how she became frightened, and it is quite clear that she may be in over her head. That night, as the group stops to camp, loud gunfire can be seen and heard in the distance, and a drunken Joel comments on how he cannot wait to get near the fighting, like an adrenaline junkie looking for his next fix. One major commentary in this movie is the idolization of war and how it can appear noble and just from the outside, and the jarring reality of the unimaginable violence when you finally make it to the front lines. This is expressed through the juxtaposition of some brief, intense action scenes and the still imagery of the black and white photography that immortalizes the pain and suffering. The next day, the group encounters some militiamen who are assaulting a building held by Loyalist forces, and it's at this point that you begin to appreciate how well done the action scenes are in this film. Alex Garland hired former Navy SEAL Raymond Doze, who brought in some old war buddies to help the cast move as though they were in a real war zone, and it shows. Add to this some great sound design, camera work, and effects, and I have to say that I came away very impressed with the battles in this movie. As our party journeys on, they encounter a multitude of different personalities and problems, including a stay at a refugee camp, a sniper battle in a makeshift winter wonderland, and a stop in a town that seems blissfully ignorant of the chaos that surrounds them. I mentioned earlier that the overall vagueness of pretty much everything is this movie's biggest downfall, but I do believe there is something to be said about the open interpretation of the impact of war. During the sniper scene, Joel asks 2 men who they are shooting at, and the men reply by asking if it really matters. The simple fact that someone is shooting at them is reason enough to shoot back. This is about survival. When they arrive at the peaceful town, they wonder if they have entered an alternate reality, as there appears to be no signs of conflict whatsoever. That is until they notice the gunmen on the rooftops, hinting at the far-reaching shadow of war. The one scene that may really stand out to some as being woke includes our cohort stumbling upon a small band of militiamen participating in some rather unseemly activities. It seems to be heavily implied they are racist, and although no epithets are thrown around, it is completely unsurprising to see Hollywood's narrow-minded interpretation of an American redneck. Nick Offerman as the president also seems to be a very thin slight towards Donald Trump, but he's barely in the movie and is used more to imply the weakness of world leaders who are only brave when they get to send other people off to die in battle. After being traumatized during their experience with the redneck militiamen, the group finally becomes embedded with the Western forces as they make their final push into Washington, D.C. The last 10 to 15 minutes of this film is an incredibly well-done action sequence that shifts from a large street battle to an intense close quarters confrontation, and I cannot help but praise many of the technical aspects. As stated before, the actors all move like they are in a real war zone, the soldiers act like soldiers, and the sound design is such that it feels like you're standing right there as a few rounds get sent downrange. One big thing that helps the action and the movie overall is the outstanding cinematography. There is no shaky, spinny, zoomy cam. Everything is clear and framed well, and the imagery throughout does a very good job of world building. Having expressed a little bit of praise, it is now time to express some disdain. You may notice this is a pretty short video compared to my other reviews, and that we didn't spend much time going over the different plot lines or characters because there aren't any. Now, I'm trying a little bit of a different format to be sure, but in terms of depth, there's basically nothing here to grasp. We aren't given any kind of backstory for any of the characters. We have no idea how the war started. We don't know what the different factions believe. We don't know what year it is. So on and so forth. We could do this all day. Add to this some characters making some really stupid decisions when they really shouldn't, and you begin to realize there doesn't seem to be any true vision for this film. There are individual scenes that are very well directed, but the overall direction is very poor. It feels like Alex Garland wanted to make a commentary on the current state of America and how we are heading towards disaster, but didn't have the balls to blame anyone in particular, I suppose out of fear that he'd chase away half of the audience. In so doing, he forgot to write a story with any real meaning, and it shows. It also feels like a major wasted opportunity, what with all the good camera work, effects, and sound design. Personally, I think they should have just made an all-out action film. You could make it serious or even silly and smartass if you so desired, but pick something. Sorry about the alliteration. You wouldn't need to give us much to hold on to, but you need more than this, and that's not hard because there's nothing here. Some critics have been praising Kirsten Dunst's acting, but I gotta say all of the acting was pretty basic. She just walks around with that concerned stoner face that she always has. There's a poor man's Pedro Pascal, Jesse is incredibly annoying, and Sammy is my favorite because he is the old codger with folksy wisdom who berates the kids for being stupid. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the overwhelming bias this movie has in support of the media and our so-called journalists. It's very clear that Garland wants us to believe that Lee and her colleagues are the heroes as he attempts to show them as objective paragons who want nothing more than to record the facts for posterity as they understand there is nothing more noble than telling the truth, and that is the real battle for humanity. In fact, they are not only the heroes, but they are also the victims. That's the real story here. Yes, this movie is actually an exploration into the trauma experienced by the journalist's soul, which is the funniest thing in this review because modern journalists don't have souls. Seriously, Alex, if you want us to feel sorry for the mainstream media, you're going to have to do a lot better than this. The world is jaded, and for good reason. So to wrap this all up, was it a good surprise? Well, kind of. It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be, but I still walked out of the theater feeling empty and dumb, but that's probably just the worm eating my brain. The point is that this movie doesn't seem to have a point. There are clues that the people working on this production might know what they are doing, but those clues lead nowhere. It's very sad that our modern sensibilities have intimidated creative minds to the point of not even finishing a story out of fear that they may offend someone. When you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. I give this movie a 4 out of 10, and you should probably just wait until this hits streaming or just pass altogether. You're not missing anything because there's nothing here. It is the void. The cold, bleak void of dumb stories. You know what? Just screw it. Have a nice day. Jesus Christ. Thank you.